What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video about Fallout New Vegas, weirdly enough. So, if you're new to my channel, for starters, not a Fallout YouTuber at all. Fallout and games like The Elder Scrolls have a lot of very dedicated community members who make a ton of content for them. That's not me at all. Most of what I cover is actually like CRPGs and stuff, and I review games after 100%ing them. So on the CRPG front, I'm a little more familiar with Fallout 1 and 2. Not a ton, mind you, I haven't played them in quite a while. My point is, my experience with the Fallout universe is not as in-depth as a lot of people on YouTube, frankly, that make a ton of this content. And as far as the mainline series goes, Fallout New Vegas is actually the one I've never played. But obviously, it comes highly recommended. And coming off the back of finishing up a bunch of CRPGs, I just kind of wanted to switch genres for a little bit and kind of play just a different style game for the channel a little bit and kind of just have a different experience ahead of some major CRPG launches next month, September 2021. And I figured I would make this video kind of off the cuff, kind of free form, and just kind of talk about some of my experiences with it. So, doubling back to my experiences with Fallout, the only game I have played extensively is truthfully Fallout 4. I do have 100% on that game, and that's largely because Fallout 4 plays well as a game. The gameplay is very good. However, the RPG mechanics definitely leave a lot of room for improvement, frankly. So with that stuff out of the way, let's talk more specifically about New Vegas. It's one of those games where it's almost impossible not to know some stuff about it just going in. Like, I'm well aware that you were the courier. There's like 4 major endings to the game. All the DLC, all that stuff. I knew a lot about it despite having never played it. So because of that, I also know a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff as well. Like, it was developed by Obsidian, but they only had like 18 months, and as a result, the game itself tends to be pretty unstable, which to this day is the case. I'm familiar with like the history of it and things like that, and I do want to mention right at the top of this, the game is definitely still unstable. However, it's just enough to not be super annoying. Like, every once in a while, the game will definitely crash, absolutely. In my experience, it happens the most often when you are trying to enter or exit a building. Like, you'll enter it, and then the game will immediately crash. Which is annoying, sure, but the game actually does have time to do its inter-building autosave that games from this engine like to do. So even though it crashed, you can then reload it and start basically exactly where it crashed from. It's rare that it crashes in a place where you're just like out in the world and actually lose progress, which does help to mitigate the fact that it is annoying and crashes pretty regularly. But it's an older game, so it loads very quickly, which kind of helps, again, mitigate some of that annoyance. And from here, I want to talk about the introduction to the game. I like this a lot. So for the most part, Fallout likes to focus on that big exit from the vault, and because of that, the games that deviate from that opening always tend to stand out. I think this is why people remember Fallout 2 a lot, because you didn't start out as someone living in a vault. Just like in New Vegas, you start out as the courier, and New Vegas even more so, because you start out by, getting shot in the face. So it's pretty hard to forget that. So it's just a very, very strong opening. And I like it a lot as well, because while it does give you a very clear objective, find the guy who shot you in the face and then you unexpectedly lived, it leaves your background very open. So if you start out in a vault, your background or storytelling up to that point has to include you living in that vault in some way. And this is where games like Fallout 3, which has its own merits and stuff, but at the end of the day, you have to be this kid who grows up in the vault. You see that happen, which means your options for role-playing as a character really come down to how you chose to react to the things that happen to you in the vault. Whereas with this courier opening, you get to decide literally the entirety of your background up to this point in the game, which kicks off the game. Which is a similar situation to Fallout 2, not exactly. Fallout 2, we of course know that we grew up in that village, but again, we can determine some of the events that led us to that point. In my opinion, the vault opening is just very restrictive, and with the ones specifically that Bethesda has worked on, Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, they really like to pigeonhole you into a background in those opening scenes. Like with Fallout 3, you're, of course, starting as a kid and then growing up in the vault. In Fallout 4, you're, forced to actually get to the vault, which is cool because it's unique, but they kind of rob you of all the experiences before that, which the Far Harbor DLC, of course, actually did address in kind of a funny, in my opinion, funny kind of way where it's like, are you really the person you think you are? Which I thought was nice. So it's not like it's unworkable, but my point is, it does kind of stifle role-playing because at the end of the day, you have to be this guy who was a veteran, so to speak, or at least as far as you remember. up to that point. Now, beyond that, more specifically RPG options and stuff, I like the perks in Fallout New Vegas that lead to conversation options even when you wouldn't expect it. Like, sometimes taking some of these perks will also give you conversation options in specific situations. And it's rare, honestly. Like, it doesn't come up a ton, in my experience at least. But then again, I don't have access to every single perk in every situation, so I don't know exactly how widespread that is. But seeing perks that you don't initially think would be a conversation option type thing, then come up later as a conversation option, is just really cool to see. I liked that a lot. Now, this is largely pulled from Fallout 3 as well, I'm aware, but the skill system, it's a little silly. Like, it's serviceable, but it has that game problem where it's like, I went from knowing absolutely nothing about, say, regular guns to a few level ups from now, I know everything there is to know about guns and I'm doing maximum damage with them. So there's kind of that little bit of a dissonance between those two things. And beyond that, I want to talk, to wrap this up, about the world and the factions, because the game is simultaneously more shallow than other Fallout games, but also feels better in a weird way as a result. For instance, a lot of locations in New Vegas are actually just basically what you see. If you walk up on a gas station, chances are you can walk into that gas station, but that's it. There's no, like, hidden secret dungeon. And in some ways, that actually makes the game feel better because it's like not every gas station is anything besides just a gas station. And then combine that with the actual world building itself, not just the physical world, but the factions and everything that control New Vegas and how the game approaches those. Because there is, of course, the 4 paths that you can go down. But unlike, say, Fallout 4, where those paths also include the majority of the side quests for the game, or at least they don't relate back in some way, whereas in New Vegas, there's the actual main faction quest, yes, but those are usually done by involving your interactions with minor factions, like, say, the Great Khans or the Brotherhood of Steel, who will then have a ton of quests for you to do themselves, and then multiple ways your involvement with that faction might go, which then lends itself to the main story. And certain main factions will want you to deal with certain groups of people in certain ways. Some factions they won't care about. Several factions want you to destroy the Brotherhood of Steel, for instance, but you don't have to do that. But not doing that will, of course, anger the people you are working for, who want that. So it's nice to see those interactions relate to the main story while not necessarily being tied to it. Because in Fallout 4, the side quests that aren't tied to the main story are numbered relatively few. Whereas, again, in New Vegas, you can go do all those side quests, and sometimes they won't actually go back to the main story at all. Sometimes they do, of course. But even if you don't need to complete them, you can still go do them, and it just feels better as a result. But there you go, guys. Just kind of some initial thoughts, really. I will be doing, of course, a review once I actually get done with the game, but it is probably going to take me a while. The next month or so is very busy for CRPGs due to some things being lined up. But that said, I am actively working on New Vegas and kind of just wanted to make a video about my initial impressions. So with that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.